middle of April, about a month and a half, I guess, from start of hurricane season, June 1st. Our weather team's always getting ready. Anthony just came back from weather conference last week down in South Texas. Always continuing education.
Yes, and it was really important for me to get back on the horse, so to speak, because I hadn't covered hurricanes for the last 6.5 years. So I was able to talk to some of the leading experts on hurricanes, and that's just so vital for me to be able to be on top of that. So when there's something that's going on, I'm able to talk to you cohesively, keep you and your family safe. But one of the people I talked to is actually the head of the National Hurricane Center, and here's just a part of our conversation. Ken Graham has been the National Hurricane Center director for the past 4 years, and he joins me now. You had the featured talk this morning, and I thought it was fascinating that your #1 point was it has been a busy past few years. How busy has it been?
It really has. I mean, we've run out of names in 2020 and 2021, and that's 2 times, and the only other time it's ever happened was 2005. There's been more Category 4 and 5 landfalls from 2017 to 2021 than we have from 1963 to 2016. It's been busy.
And I mean, it's staggering when you think of that. And then you have the forecast for this year, which again is another high number, well above average. So what are you sharing with people this year? What's the message to people specifically in Southeast Texas?
Yeah, you got to have a plan. You got to be ready. And you really look at all the data. And that's something else that I shared in the preparedness presentation today. If you look at all the big storms, the 150 miles per hour or greater, every one of them over the last 100 years was a tropical storm 3 days prior. So that is not a lot of time on the timeline. You got to have a plan. You got to be ready to get into action.
What I also liked about your talk this morning was you really got a lot more into the psychology part of the science instead of the science of the hurricanes and the tropical systems. And I thought it was really fascinating, people's perceptions, how that really guides and influences how they react when a storm is heading their way. Talk about that.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of perception of your risk is based on your experience. So a lot of it's based on your previous storm. Every storm is different. Little changes can make such a big difference. 10 or 20 miles in either direction, that can mean the difference between, I don't know, 5 to 10 feet of storm surge, maybe 10 to 15 inches of rain. Difference with that little wiggle can make that much difference. So you got to understand every storm is different. Know your risk, have a plan for that, and realize just because it didn't happen last time doesn't mean it won't happen next time.
You know, one of his big messages that he said was we, as far as the warning community goes, and that goes from city leaders all the way into elected officials, we have to figure out how we're going to get people to evacuate because these storms they're getting stronger faster. So right now you need to allow 3 days to evacuate. Sometimes you don't get 3 days. Sometimes you get 24 hours. Sometimes you get 48 at the most. So what are you going to do when there's a tropical storm that you would never evacuate for, that in 24 hours time is now a Category 4 hurricane, and you can't stay and you don't have enough time to evacuate? So that's a big concern, is how do we get people out sooner when something isn't an immediate threat 3 days out?
Well, I mean, I think back to Rita and Katrina, where we had this interesting conversation about when is a good time to get out. And I feel like in some ways you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Because you tell everybody, hey, it might happen, it's going to happen, they leave and nothing happens, and they're like, well, why did we listen? And to the Hurricane Center's gentleman's point, that builds the psychology for the next one. So they say, well, last time they told me to leave and nothing happened, so this time I'm not going to leave,
and those storms were out in the open Atlantic. They were monster hurricanes as they moved into the Gulf of Mexico, and we were looking at these things for 5 to 7 days. And over the last several hurricane seasons, these storms are forming in the Gulf of Mexico. They're becoming monster storms 24 to 48 hours before making landfall. And then what do? So
you don't even have the benefit of the 3 to 5, 7 day heads up even.
No, it's like you've got to go now, or it's like, well, we can't get people to go out now. And that happened in Louisiana last year, and they were very fortunate because that storm tracked a little to the right. That could have been devastating with hundreds or even thousands of deaths if the storm had tracked a little to the left.
Well, and psychologically, those folks in Louisiana have been hit so many times recently that, I mean, any sign of any storm.
At that point, they were over it. They're like, you know what? We've gone through all these storms. It's like we're just going to get through it.
We're waited out, right? But you're right. The challenge is massive. And that's why every hurricane season we keep putting that same message out there. And you're going to hear it from us as we get ready, Severe Weather Awareness Week and all these other things as we approach the summer.
Got to be ready.